to our second panel discussion of Health is Well Tracked. The topic is medical devices. To participate in the conversation, we have with us Ajit Rangnekar, Nisha Vempalle, Professor Amitabha Bandyopadhyay, Dr. Arjun Arunachalam, and Ashwin Naik. I will do the brief intros to the panelists, and I will hand it over to Mr. Ajit. Mr. Ajit is serving as the Director General at Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad. Mr. Rangnekar is the former Dean of Indian School of Business. Recently, he was appointed as the Director of GMAC. He is the sole Indian on the GMAC team. Prior to that, he held the position of Deputy Dean at the school. Prior to ISB, he was the country head first for Pricewaterhouse Consulting and then for PwC Consulting in Hong Kong and the Philippines. He was head of telecom entertainment industry consulting practice for PwC in East Asia. Mr. Rangnekar completed his undergrad degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai, and his post-graduation in management from the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Welcome, Mr. Ajit. Next, we have Nisha Vempalle, who leads medical devices regulatory operations in UK and EU for Freyr Solutions. Nisha is head of regulatory operations in regulatory readiness, strategic planning, and being project delivery spearhead. She has more than 16 years of experience across regulatory affairs, delivering global innovation projects, regulatory strategies. She has wealth of experience from her previous role at BAGB, GlaxoSmithKline, and Bicon, spanning more than a decade. Nisha is a pharmacist and holds a master's degree in pharmaceutical sciences from Kingston University. Nisha is also a certified mentor and coach, offering mentoring and coaching to peers and also offering volunteer mentoring to students, professionals, and underprivileged people. Welcome, Ms. Nisha.
Thank you.
We have next Professor Amitabha Bandyopadhyay, who is currently a professor at IIT Kanpur. Since July 2018, Dr. Amitabha is also serving as the professor in charge of innovation and incubation and runs the technology business incubator of IIT Kanpur. His area of interest is developmental biology of cartilage and bone, osteoporosis, and osteoarthritis. The overall objective of his laboratory is to uncover the molecular genetic circuit responsible for skeletal morphogenesis. Dr. Amitabha Bandyopadhyay earned his BSc in chemistry from Presidency University. He conducted his doctoral research in the laboratory at Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. Welcome, Professor. Next, we have Dr. Arjun, who is the founder and CEO of Voxelgrids. The Voxelgrids team comprises of mechanical engineers, RF engineers, and MRI physicists with decades of experience in the field. Previously, Dr. Arjun served as the entrepreneur in residence at Foundation for Innovation and Social Entrepreneurship. He pursued teaching for a phase in his career and was an assistant professor at IIT Bombay in Department of Electrical Engineering. Dr. Arjun received his PhD in Electrical Engineering from University of Wisconsin-Madison. He did his master's in Electrical Engineering from the same university. He did his bachelor's in Electrical Engineering from the University of Madras, India. Welcome, Dr. Arjun. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Ashwin Naik. He is an author and award-winning entrepreneur. He is widely regarded as the go-to expert on affordable healthcare innovation, scaling social impact, and mental well-being at work. As an entrepreneur, he has started multiple healthcare organizations, Mana Wellness, Let's Talk, and Vatsalya Serenity Mental Health Organization acquired by CureFit. He is an Ashoka Fellow as well as TED Fellow and a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Mr. Naik did his MS in biochemistry/bioinformatics from University of Hudson. He was also awarded a certification of completion for the Global Leadership and Public Policy for the 21st Century Program. Welcome, Mr. Ashwin. Over to you, Mr. Ajit.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever part of the world you are in. Welcome to the medical devices session. Medical devices covers the full gamut of things, everything that is used in diagnosis and delivery of medical service. So Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, which I represent, is actually the name of the Hyderabad Science and Technology Cluster, a joint initiative of the Telangana State and the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. And our mandate is to help startups and fast track them, especially in the health and agriculture sector. our focus is on identifying the major problems and gaps in the ecosystem and try to bridge them. So in the last just 1 year plus, we have worked with nearly 200 startups. And in this current year, 2021 alone, we have evaluated over 100 startups in the med devices space. So what our work shows that there are some big issues which are very specific to the medtech sector. First is the unusual multidisciplinary opportunity that is now arising, especially with the AI, ML, and other things, but a lot more of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and other engineering coming together with the medical sciences. The second is the importance of regulation, which, by the way, is different in different countries. The US and European regulations are very important to us in India, and obviously are the Indian regulations. The third is the challenge of finding samples, finding patients, clinical advice, and saying, unlike a digital, innovation, you simply cannot just take something and go into what I would call into market, right? In this case, you must ensure that whatever we do is as good as the gold standard. You're dealing with human lives after all. And therefore, this becomes an extremely big challenge. And lastly, of course, is the challenge of manufacturing, sales, distribution, maintenance, and all these things, which a pure digital sector does not have. And therefore, finding investors who are willing to accept linear, reasonable returns rather than the hockey stick returns that we nowadays get or at least people claim to get at hockey stick valuations, if not returns, that we see in the digital space. So given all these issues, we have a panel which I hope will address most of these things. We'll start with Arjun, who is the co-founder of Voxelgrids, will walk us through his journey and the kind of challenges he faced. He will then be followed by Nisha, who will cover the US and European regulations. Then Professor Amitabha, who has done a great work in understanding the overall landscape and will talk about what is now happening in India, plus what are the opportunities in India. And after that, we will have Ashwin Naik, who together with Zintio, Scient, and us, Rich, we have established Project TAGE to onboard hospitals, to work with startups, to provide that clinical guidance, samples, evaluation, etc. Each one of us will take about 6 to 8 minutes so that we have enough time for Q&A. So let me hand over now to you, Arjun, and I will get off from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you. So just to introduce our company, we are in the business of building next generation MRI scanners, lightweight, compact MRI scanners. MRI stands for magnetic resonance imaging. We are today a team of around 22 people, engineers and non-technical staff, predominantly engineers. And we are, ISO certified to sell, service, manufacture MRI scanners, and have received preliminary certifications from CDSCO, the Indian Regulatory Agency for manufacturing MRI scanners. And as far as our journey is concerned, I think we are a company that has focused on hardware innovation. Hardware is at the very important activity connected to what we do. So we are quite unique in that. It's absolute high-end hardware, cryogenics, RF engineering, mechanical engineering, a confluence of various interdisciplinary fields. And some of the work we do does not happen even in very big government institutions. And then there is, of course, software inventions, which is all about the physics of the software and how it can impact clinical imaging. So the product attempts to bring these innovations in both these areas and bring them together to introduce a new product. At the moment, our current status is that we are into beta pilot manufacturing, and we already have one installation in Bangalore, and we're planning for a second installation very soon. And the various challenges we face are pretty routine, I would say, in certain sense, but very unique also because of the device we have. I mean, from day one as a startup, we cannot go sit in a co-working space. We need real estate space. We can host a magnet. And so, spend 7-8 months trying to find a shed that works for us, get it ready. We spent about $200,000 just to get the shed ready to be able to move in, to be able to do what we could. So the scale at which we operate and what we do, finding the right talent, also talking to the government about regulations, which are very promising at the moment, I would say, especially for our product. But to understand those and to then find the right ecosystem to be able to execute on those regulations and prove the product is fine, and also to rely on a dormant ecosystem that has potential but has never really supported such a high-end device. So there's a lot of adaptation that the supply chain needs to do, and also interest. Frankly, we are a small player, so those have been the big challenges for us. Attracting talent has not been that much of a challenge. We've been able to bring in people organically, see a lot of promise there. But overall, the idea is to address what, in our view, is an imaging modality that has very poor accessibility in the country today, and of course globally also. 70% of the world has zero access to MRI, and it's an important imaging modality. And the reason for that is cost and affordability. And why is that a problem? Because people do not design devices subject to the context in which they'll be used. So one size fit all approach from the US or Germany does not work everywhere, and therefore that's an opportunity. And one should, if one has the right domain expertise and depth, one can actually exploit that. So that has been our objective, and I would say the overall journey has been over 15 years, though we were formally incubated in 2016, and then our Series A closed only 3 to 4 months ago. So it took 5 years to get to Series A. It's been a real journey. So I'll stop there, Ajit. I mean, there's a lot that I could, give, but I would rather answer in the right context with all other inputs. But yes, it's been an interesting journey. I would say that much. Yes.
Absolutely fantastic, Arjun. I mean, I couldn't have expected for a better setting of the whole thing. The multidisciplinary, the uniqueness of various, and you pointed out to an extremely important, which is that this is an area in which you cannot just say, okay, here is I can do a global digital solution with Facebook or something and take it across. You simply cannot do it without the context in this.
Yeah.
And there is one more idea which I hope Nisha will certainly cover, is that unlike the general digital space where IP is usually not a problem, you deal with an idea where there are enormous IP constraints because everyone has captured and held on to various parts of all of this. So you have to work around many of those. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you also for sticking to the time. Over to you, Nisha.
Thank you, Ajit. Thank you, Arjun. That was quite insightful to share your experience. And for me, my understanding as such, I would say would be it's an absolute privilege to be part of this medical devices panel discussion. And I'm hoping to add value to the session today, especially in the context of innovation and startups, which I believe are very crucial to the whole medical device industry. So medical device, if you look at it in itself, is something very innovative. And it is quite exciting when I talk about medical devices because I have that personal interest for medical devices. And I would think this was not even a thought a few decades ago. I know people could not imagine this could happen. And now we have medicines sort of, mixed up with whole concept that it can become a device, and the device can actually prove very life-critical, life-saving, essential part of the whole medical device industry as such, and the whole human life as we go along. And what I've noticed is we have become into the mode of opera where survival of the fittest, that sort of the whole theory comes alive again. And COVID is a real example for that. Throughout the COVID, there were so many medical devices innovated as part of the whole existence to support how each and every country, each and every human being has fought COVID through this. And I believe innovation with the regulatory compliance at the heart and core is the essence of speed to market. Any startups they're looking at, they would think more about how I can get this device quickly operated. But at the same time, I would believe that we have to get the thinking or thought process that we have to think how we can achieve the regulatory compliance as well. Not that we have a device, we have an idea which we have come up, we have experimented, it all works. Now we have to think about compliance, which means you have to spend another 8 months trying to get that ISO certification, that QMS system in place, and ensuring you're meeting the regulatory compliance, preparing the documentation. I would rather believe have that regulatory strategy quite an early stage at an ideation level, understand, can you even say this? Can you even have this claim on this product? Can you even say your product does what it does? And that sort of ideation, that sort of discussion is required at a very early stage, when which regulations become part and parcel as part of your whole journey from a very early stage. And ensuring that having the regulatory strategy in place and having that regulatory speed to market process or approach in place is very essential for startups. And with my experience at Freyr Life Sciences, where we offer this service, when which we provide regulatory strategies, I have seen umpteen number of companies coming to us where we actually provide that strategy very early stage. And also I have seen where companies come to us at the end of it, where they've got everything, they've even received an approval, say in the home country. It could be India, it could be China, it could be anywhere else. And they are now thinking about going to EU and US. And that's when the whole thing goes out of proportion with regards to the timelines. And they would realize, oh my God, so getting a notified body approval in EU takes about 12 months. So this is the current timeline. And Brexit has just added that complexity layer, which was just not required for the industry, but it is something which has happened and we have to deal with it. And with that said, and US is a completely different area. So just getting one approval in one country is not going to help to get an approval in another country, especially in medical devices. Unlike medicines, it's different. Medicines, we have a lot of MRAs in place, and you have centralized procedures in place. You have a lot of other options where a lot of things are mutually recognized with regards to regulatory landscape. Unfortunately, medical devices, it's still quite evolving. If you look at the MRAs, mutual recognition agreements, what we have in place with regards to US, EU agreements, or with regards to UK and US and other countries, in the context of Brexit, what UK is trying to achieve at this point of time, there is a lot, which needs to be done by the industry as such. But if I come back to the whole conversation about innovation and startups, I would say innovation is definitely key to the future. Without innovation, I don't think we have that existence, and it's extremely important we sort of continue the journey of innovation with regulatory compliance at the core or the heart. So with that said, I can talk about it for a very long time, but I would like to, pass the panel as such, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you would have in the context of EU, US, and India regulations with medical devices.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nisha. And I think Nisha made an extremely important point. If you are planning to start a medtech company, first thing you must understand is regulations. People start doing their tests and putting it on pieces of paper and lying it around. There is no traceability, there is no audit proof, and then all that 2 years, 3 years of work is down the drain. Right? So you end up not just losing time, but also your entire credibility. And also what it also means is that you have to be clear about which market you're going to be addressing. And start planning right from day one. So thank you very much. Over to you, Professor Bandyopadhyay.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very important topic and a very good forum to talk about this whole medical device ecosystem in India. See, it is not news for any one of us that India has this dichotomy where on one hand, you see people coming to this country for medical tourism. And at the same time, you can safely assume that good 70% of the population is out of the ambit of medical care. And at least in part, it is due to the very expensive nature of healthcare industry, which is attributable in part to the way we get medical devices, which is 85% of it is imported. And it is import cost is one thing, which adds to it is the cost of services and repair and the time taken and all of that. Just yesterday, I was on a discussion with a very good ENT surgeon from Kanpur. And I learned something yesterday, which I did not know, that any child gets a cochlear implant before the age of 5 is 100% subsidized today by the government of India. It is 6 lakh rupees per implant. and it is the rate of this genetic defect is 5 to 6 per 1,000. So you can imagine how many children will require this cochlear implant and how much money is being spent. And it is entirely going to foreign destinations because we don't make any. Now, naturally, the question comes up that why don't we make any? We don't make, like if you go to a eye clinic, every device that you see there are imported. And these are not, it is not that these are technically particularly challenging. As we have seen during the COVID crisis, that so many innovators came up and delivered right in time the like machines that were quite complex. And in every case, that I am familiar with, we realized that it is not just import substitution. It is actually what Arjun talked about. There is a lot of context that was built into the medical device that are being built in India. Like many of you may know that I was part of the team that championed this ventilator project from IIT Kanpur. It is not just that it is a affordable machine. Yes, it is affordable. So that's what is helping the cause a lot. But there are many features built into it where you do not have to depend on importing for getting your components. So there are small innovations there as well. So there isn't dearth of talent. The market is huge. Even then, why don't we make medical devices? So there I have seen. So I am part of various committees, and we are one of the partner organizations for BIRAC, which funds heavily into medical devices. And every year, some 30-35 good medical devices companies get funding. Today in India, if you are a startup and if you have a good idea, getting a funding of up to 1 crore is not at all a problem within first 1 year. But even then, we are not seeing the success in the marketplace. Why? Because of two reasons. One is that the regulatory framework is as clumsy as it can possibly be as on today. And I can see that there is a lot of effort going on on the government side to streamline it. I just saw a notification that a new committee is being constituted to go through the whole framework. Also, I am seeing a lot of activities from CDSCO and others. So I sincerely hope that this is streamlined really fast. And I agree with what Nisha said, that every medical device company, when they are planning their design, there should be regulatory input in the very beginning. And we at IIT Kanpur do that, and it is being championed by one alumnus of IIT Kanpur only. And I'm very grateful. The other problem is that Ajit talked about is the funding. See, we are talking about manufacturing industries. So getting the beta prototype is one thing for which you have no dearth of funding. If you are good, you will get the money. But the day you are talking about setting up a proper manufacturing facility and the manpower, the supply chain and everything, it is a pretty expensive affair. And I guess this regulatory complexities and the lack of funding perhaps go hand in hand. Once that becomes streamlined, then funding will come in. And once the funding comes in, I am pretty sure that very rapidly we will see fantastic development of medical device ecosystem in the country. And I'm very, very hopeful. So that's where I would stop, and I will take questions later on.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I think I want to thank all three of you for being extremely lucid and very, very brief in your thing. Normally this doesn't happen. I've been the panel moderator where I keep wondering how the hell do I stop people from talking, but you people have been so beautiful. And Dr. Bandyopadhyay, 2-3 points. I think we demonstrated during COVID that regulation can be quick. And I think we cannot allow this to be a one-off emergency thing. We have to grab this, and all of us make a very strong that you have proven now you cannot go back to the bad old ways. Because that is, as you absolutely rightly, that is one of the biggest impediments to getting funding into this. Because there is a complete uncertainty about how long the regulatory approval will take. Correct? So that's point number one. Point number two is another point that you made very validly, is that the graveyard is full of outstanding ideas which have died at TRL 3-4 level. And because by that time the product has already been formed, but how to take it, scale it up, how to do a mass scale evaluation, how to manufacture, distribution it is, and I keep telling all my young friends that form of collaboration, I think that's a phenomenal business opportunity. You just go and see what BIRAC has funded over the last 3-4 years, pick up 3 or 4 and take them from TRL level 3-4 to TRL 8-9 and flog it off. And whoever is listening, all you engineers and bright young people from IITs, I seriously think it's a phenomenal opportunity. And lastly, I think the other thing that you talked about, ophthalmology, and I'm not so sure about cochlear and the ear part, but certainly in ophthalmology, we are beginning to see some fantastic innovations happening. LV Prasad, and I must admit that I'm a director there, therefore I know it. I think it's the best research institution in ophthalmology in our country and in the top 10. They are now working with MIT and doing crowdsourcing and coming up with some amazing, affordable, easy to use innovation. Again, somebody needs to take it from them and mass produce it. So I completely agree with you that I think the future is very, very good. But as somebody recently said, this is India disappoints both its optimists and pessimists. So we will stick on that and let Ashwin. Ashwin, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think fascinating to hear Arjun, Nisha, and Professor talk about all the things around innovation. I think, Professor, you touched upon some of the things I wanted to talk about, mainly around 4 things which are sort of hiding in plain sight. And maybe we should put more emphasis on them in the context of medical innovation and medical technology. The first one, I would say, while innovation, regulatory challenges and all that, we have to tackle. But my pitch would be that distribution is even more important than innovation. Just like Professor said, I think we have full of innovative ideas, and distribution always becomes a problem. Whether it is through market channels, whether it is through clinical validation, regulatory, whatever you call it, I think not many companies are focusing on distribution. And Arjun, I think, briefly touched upon that as well. So that's one. The second one is, I think, collaboration is also missing in our sector. Because we were focused so much on innovation, we focused inward and looking at what can we do, how can we do it better. And we forgot that there is a world of collaboration required, and not just from our sector. I think it's very clear, like you rightly said, governments, industry, startup, incubators, everybody can pitch in. I think this field is now open to anybody who has a good idea and a passion for the field to come in. The third one I would say is, many a times when we look at innovation, the conversation revolves around price and cost. I think that's a wrong place to start. Given that we have so many needs, maybe we should up the discussion and say, let's build the best quality product. So focus on quality rather than price from day one. I'm sure all of you have heard technologies which are saying, we'll make it at 20% of this price. I think we should move away from that and say, how can we build world-class products? And we'll figure out whether it is premium or affordable. And medical technology typically starts at the top end and then goes down the chain. So I think we should be open to that. The last one, which might be a little controversial given that we are at the IIT conference, I think we should emphasize more doctors coming into the field than more engineers. I think we have enough engineers, not enough doctors. So can we invite more doctors to be part of the medical technology innovation ecosystem And that's where our focus has been as part of Project Tej with Professor Rangnekar, is how do we build this collaboration? How do we build this ecosystem? How do we invite more doctors to come in? How do we build distribution, right? All the 4 things that I mentioned, how can we do it in a very systematic fashion, right? So that each company doesn't have to struggle, and we build the playbook that anybody can come in and fit in and then accelerate. So I'm excited to be part of this panel. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to continue discussion now.
Thank you, Ashwin. I'll just lob the ball briefly to the organizers. I don't know whether there are any questions on any chat box or anything, so do let me know. In the meantime, just getting back, I think I'll start with Ashwin's last point. I think the issue is not that we are saying doctors give up your practice and come and join startups. No, we're saying continue to work in your field, but give a part of your time to help create the new devices. We had one person who came and said, I've got this app and it's on this phone. When you get a heart attack, open my app. I said, oh, hey. The doctor started laughing. He said, have you ever had a heart attack? Do you even know? So we don't want that kind of rubbish. So if we can join hands, that's number one. Number two is collaboration. And, this is where I'll do a pitch for this thing. This is how the science and technology clusters have been formed. In the last budget, the finance minister announced 9. As far as I know, 7 have been formed, 6 or 7 in Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Pune, Delhi, Udaipur, Bhubaneswar, and I think there is one more. But these science and technology clusters are supposed to bring together academic institutions, research institutions, startups, incubators, industry, government, and funders, etc., to co-create and co-listing solutions. So I think to some extent it is happening. It's still a long, long way to go, and we have to work. But the third thing, and Ashwin, I'll also give a slight different twist, and maybe we can have that discussion here itself. You see, unfortunately, in medical devices, and take the work which Arjun is doing, if these kind of devices are available affordably, so many thousands more lives will be saved. We are working, and that's part of Project Tej, now 3 startups which are working in the neonatal space, which could save thousands, if not lakhs, of babies from dying. What value do we put to it? If we just start looking at this as a pure cost benefit, it's just completely wrong. And I think we need to start a movement. Very recently, Professor Arun Maira came out with this again, that we have economists have to change and start looking at this societal value, environment degradation, environment improvement, life saved. How do we put a value on some of these? And I think these are some, again, if we can find that, and if we can find the right funding for that kind of thing, many of these startups will benefit enormously. Right? So while we wait for the organizations to let us know whether there are any questions, I have one question for you, and more for Nisha, I guess, than others. So we said that regulatory things are what people should see. Is it possible for us to prepare an initial basic checklist? See, as science and technology clusters, we go across the whole country. And we are trying, and we certainly want to work with IIT Kanpur, IIT Bombay, and everywhere else. Can we set up an initiative where anyone who's getting into this, we tell them just fill this up and look, and this will at least tell you, look, you need to worry about this. So like questions like, what is your market that you're looking at? What, have you checked and ensured that we have white space in which to do this, etc., etc. So is it possible for us to do? We'll be happy to host it free. We have no problem. You can. So
sure, that's a very, very good question, Ajit. So thank you for the question. So I would say, yes, it is very much possible. If you look at what Freyr does, we have a specific regulatory intelligence tool as well in place, which actually collects regulatory intelligence what is evolving, what is changing in every country. And as part of this, we do have that information available with Freyr, in which we can provide to any startup we would like to know, right, I want to go to Africa, what do I need to do? What are the things I need to look at? Or I want to go to India, I want to register my product in India, what are the timelines? They can actually reach out to us. If they provide a list of countries, Freyr could draw up that sort of information and provide a report to them. And in parallel, what I would suggest would be that this sort of thing, like as I said, we could host a free webinar or a free conference like this, and we are happy to come along and share those details. And because it'll be a very long session, I can talk about just India for the next 1 hour. With that said, we are having a webinar coming up in next week, actually next Wednesday, on India regulations on medical devices. So please feel free to join that webinar. It'll be very useful because there are a lot of regulations which are changing in India quite recently. And there is a deadline coming up, which is 1st of October, that the devices which have not been registered till now, they have to register by 1st of October 2021. So it's a crucial deadline. So this sort of evolving information is available out there. It's all about someone has to bring the information together and try and host it, as you rightly said. And we would be, Freyr and myself would be very happy to be part of an initiative like this, and would come along. We would be happy to share the information what we have and help any startup. And all they have to do is just contact us, and we'd be able to help them providing that information to get them going. To say, okay, what all things you need to have, or even developing that regulatory strategy as required for them to understand. Right, my go-to markets are US, EU, and India. These are 3 markets I have, or I want to go to China, India, and Hong Kong. So we could actually develop that whole go-to market strategy for them.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. I'm going to switch this back to Professor Bandyopadhyay to address 2 issues. One is the doctor-engineer collaboration, and the other question which has been put on the board by Siddharth Tatia. What are the funding opportunities for a medtech design or manufacturing startup? So over to you, Professor Bandyopadhyay.
Okay, sorry. Just to let you know that the first organized effort for bringing engineers and doctors on the same platform for medical device was done by the current Director General of ICMR. There was a collaboration set up between IIT Delhi and AIIMS Delhi to start the Stanford India Biodesign Program, which has now become the School of International Biodesign Program. That was the first instance. Then at IIT Kanpur, we made a poor man's copy of that same thing, where we trucked with KGMU Lucknow, and some fantastic innovations are coming along the way. And with that effort, then Department of Biotechnology got impressed. Now IIT Kanpur has been sanctioned one such program. It's a biodesign program. Also, you may know, Ajit, that IIT Hyderabad and AIG Hospital Hyderabad, they have started their biodesign program. So yes, it is few, but it is happening. And then you were starting to see IIT Kharagpur has already started their medical school. IIT Kanpur has already announced that their medical school will come on board in another couple of years. So yes, we are a little late to arrive in the theater, but it is happening. Vis-a-vis funding, I will give very categorical answers. I do not know of any other country where startup funding from the government is so much generous. Just last month, there has been a new funding scheme called Startup India Seed Fund. It is a 935 crore rupee fund. And the diktat is that it has to be funded to those companies that are less than 2 years old and has not received more than 10 lakh rupees from any government sources. So if you are a medical device company and if you have a good idea, that is your first source of 20 to 50 lakh rupees. Then there is DST's funding scheme called Nidhi Prayas, which gives you 10 lakh rupees. Then there is BIRAC's big funding that gives you 50 lakh rupees. And nobody stops you from getting multiple funds together. I'm not saying that you propose the same project, but for the same project, you can propose different aspects of it, and you can get funding. And nowadays, any good incubator will have enormous funding from CSR sources. So there is another 25-30 lakh rupees. So that's why I said that if you are good, for the first 1 year, 1.5 years, to get 1 to 1.5 CR is not at all a big deal.
I completely agree. I think, there is no better place in the world, I think, for if you have an idea which you want to take to TRL level 3-4. Our problem is from TRL level 4 to 7, 8, 9. And honestly, this is not the government's job. This should be the private investor community job. And this is where the private investor community in India, very honestly and very publicly, has failed the medtech sector. We are all just gung-ho on digital nonsense. When a Zomato valuation becomes probably bigger than a vaccine manufacturer like BB, there is something wrong with this country and the world. I'm sorry. I'm just extremely upset by this nonsense that's happening. And if we as human beings and we as investors start putting our money into that kind of stuff, which is purely valuation driven and not even return driven, forget the fact that, then I think that is where the problem is. And again, we have to start a campaign to get more funding into this sector. Right? I don't know how much time we have. I think
last 2 minutes, Ajit, sir.
Last 2 minutes. Ashwin, can you tell a little bit more about Project Tej?
Yes, happy to. So, I think Project Tej is sort of focused on addressing many of these challenges that we discussed today, which is how do we take these technologies to scale, to market, and really benefit from the innovation that is happening. And we started off with a collaboration between Rich, Cyient, and Zinteo. But really the champion of this effort was the state of Telangana, because they believed that we have to do it at a state level and not at a consortium level. The way it works is government, private sector, startups, everybody comes together, and we work with a select group of startups and identify what will it take for them to, reach 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 1 crore people, and then build all those pieces together, whether it is clinical validation, market access, regulatory support, and all of that. We have been doing this for 2 years, and good number of partners involved, supported by various players from the ecosystem, and we are now looking to scale this up with the support from multiple partners across the country. We've just empaneled hospitals in other states now, and looking forward to working with all of you to build this out. I think this is like Professor said, the key here is collaboration, and the fundamental sort of tenet of Project Tej is collaboration. So looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Check us out at Rich, and we can actually work with you wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you don't have to be in Telangana, but we'll help you. So on that note, thank you very much, panel. I think this has been the most lovely panel in terms of your precision of your answers, the clarity with which you're doing. I'm personally very grateful to you. Thank you, Pan IIT. It's always great to be back as a part of the IIT ecosystem. And I hand over back now to the organizers. Thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you.